Welcome back to Talking Dragon Age, the show where I talk about Dragon Age. Today we're covering a bunch of theories that didn't really fit under a single theme like Dwarves or Elves or the Blight. So let's start off here and talk about the Scaled ones. In the Descent, we find journals describing a brief conflict between a contingent of Dwarves and an unknown group called the Scaled ones. They're described as being humanoid, covered in scales, and attacking with their teeth and claws. An easy answer to what these things were are human reavers, as Cassandra describes them growing scales and going mad. But some aspects don't line up in that case. For one, after one of them is killed, the others are surprised to see that and end up retreating. Savage monsters like the crazed reavers or Darkspawn probably wouldn't have done that. There's also the fact that their armor caused a dwarven axe to just bounce off. That's pretty dang unique armor. Even dwarven armor doesn't hold against their own axes. And then there's a ritual. They speak an unknown language and bow to some kind of priestess that breathes fire. Then they abandon their camp, and we don't know why. So we have no idea what these things were. It's possible they are the Fex, a native species of Parvalan, or members of the Kossith, which are a whole other topic. It's also possible these things were some kind of spirits or demons, but we really have no idea. They're probably their own thing, but it's odd that this is the only mention of them, except possibly these elven murals. We have to wonder, are they involved with the Titans like the Shabratal, thus surviving the Darkspawn? Or, I don't know, if they lived in the deep roads, they'd have to deal with the Darkspawn. But if they were on the surface, why have we not heard of anyone else encountering them? Maybe they were involved with a pool like from Horrors of Hormak? Here's a thought. The Shabratal had an obnoxious amount of fighters with really strong weaponry. Who have they been fighting for the past few thousand years? I mean, it seems the Darkspawn avoided the Titan they were in. Do you think maybe they've actually been fighting the Scaled ones? Just a thought. One last thing I want to mention is that they could possibly be the shadowy group that the presence in the vial in the Brazilian ruins remembers. Let's talk about that place for a minute. I do recommend checking out my dedicated video for it because there's a lot going on there. In short, humans probably built the place, but elves lived there too, and probably not as slaves. I think the place was specifically studying elven artifacts. Speaking of elven artifacts, the Dalish elf origin ruins were probably built by the same people, and the Eluvian. Many people think Tamlin saw the Black City when looking in it. I personally prefer the theory that it was a dwarven tag. And speaking of the dwarves, yeah, I couldn't think of a better segue. The Legion of Steel was a contingent of hundreds of golems that were sent into the deep roads to find the Anvil of the Void. It was a bad plan and the golems were all lost, but I don't think they were destroyed. Rather, I think they got lost, or were sealed in somewhere. So in other words, I think hundreds of golems are still alive, just inactive, and buried somewhere. Maybe we'll find them someday in the future. And speaking of underground stuff, I'm really stretching these connections. Let's talk about the Grand Necropolis and Mortalitasi. Again, my dedicated video for it has much more information. But basically, the place goes super deep underground, and the deeper you go, the more wonky things get. As though the veil is crazy thin. Like, worse than we've ever seen before. And even the Mournwatch don't know everything that's down there. I think the people who built the place started construction from deep within the earth, and built up to the surface. As for how and why the Navarrans have the beliefs they do about death, it's unclear. We know the practices and beliefs about death displacing a spirit started with a Tevinter guy named Vitus Fabria, but we don't know how he developed this belief. I think he found something at the bottom of where the necropolis now is that caused him to develop this belief. Probably something elven, but who knows. It's also possible that the whole thing was a cover-up. I kinda like that idea, but it's really just speculation at this point. As for the modern Mortalitasi, I think most of them are just doing their normal body-preserving thing, but some of them are political snakes, and that's dangerous. Okay, I'm pretty done finding segues, I'm just gonna start saying whatever comes to mind. I suspect we're gonna have to make a choice about who rules Antiva. Either restoring power to the monarchy, possibly by allying with a shady group called the Rosso Noche, or else giving more power to the merchant princes or the Antivan crows. The mage prison called Ionar is probably in northern Ferelden, but its exact location and connection to the Imperial Highway was covered up by the Templars. The veil there is also super thin, and something happened that caused literally everyone there to vanish without a trace. Would make a good DLC, I think. The Avar god Korth is a Titan. Fen'Harel could show up even if he was made Tranquil. He could have studied some stuff that could help us. Whether he's Tranquil, possessed, or apprenticed to a Magister, he could have a good cameo. But that choice is not accounted for, and... The Order of Fiery Promise kind of has the same goal as Solas, so I was thinking they might end up helping him, but now I have no idea. They're a cool concept and I want to see more of them. Okay, now we got some big ones to cover. Let's talk about Andraste. So I can't go over everything about her because that's kind of a lot, so I'll just cover the highlights. I suspect at some point Andraste was possessed by a spirit of faith, and that's part of what enabled her to perform many miracles. I suspect that's also the reason the ashes are able to heal people. Andraste was almost certainly a mage. Some suspect she was a host for Mythal, given certain similarities in their lives, including the fact that they only had daughters, and those daughters only had daughters. Personally, I hope that's not the case. It's less interesting to me if that were the case. That's not to say Mythal couldn't have influenced her in some way, possibly by her host at the time. Maybe her mother or her sister's mother. Also, possibly guiding Havard to bring Andraste's ashes to a temple that was once Mythal's. But I don't like the idea of them being one and the same. Also, some suggest Andraste was an old god baby, given she was born the same year Dumat was defeated. However, I don't like that idea either. More information in her dedicated video. I also have a theory about a possible descendant of hers, Leliana. One way or another, Leliana was special. She's naturally resistant to the Blight, and if she was killed in the Temple of Sacred Ashes, she is brought back to life, possibly by the Titan. But why would she have been chosen like that? I think the Titan, or whatever, recognized her as the descendant of the woman whose ashes have stayed in the temple for so long. Next we have the Executors, the ones who execute the will of those across the sea with precise execution. For anyone who doesn't know, this is me whining about the pronunciation of Executors over Executors. There's not much to say on them, just that even Solas is wary of them. They have plans for Thedas, but we don't know what. They allegedly recruited members of the Inquisition peacefully, which is weird. I suspect those across the sea refers to the Kossith, but really, who knows? I'm curious what the Qunari know about them. Someone, a fellow mage, was watching over Bethany Hawke as a possible recruit for something. I personally suspect it was the Executors, but we really have no idea. It could have been anyone. But what made Bethany special enough to be watched over like this? I think it has to do with the Hawke bloodline. In Legacy, it only seems to matter because it was Malcolm's blood that renewed Corypheus' binding. But there's something else. Malcolm was naturally talented, as were his children. I believe the reason for this is that they are distant descendants of Calenhad, who drank the blood of a great dragon, one of extraordinarily few who did so. Other Reavers only drank the blood of regular dragons or high dragons. Great dragons are above even them. I think one of Calenhad's descendants was a mage, and so was kept away from the court. They eventually would have founded or married into the Hawke bloodline, making them a very distant cousin of Alistair and Kaelin. Oh, and I think Hawke could have survived in the Fade in some form. Possibly like the way Justinia did, however that works, but we've never known someone to die while physically and completely in the Fade. I would prefer this to only be the case for Hawke and not the Warden, possibly justified by the Blight. Just makes the choice more meaningful. But that's not included in Veilguard either, so... Oh, I almost forgot some. Garahel is a time traveler. I honestly think that's my favorite theory I've ever posted. The Doyleist explanation is that it's just a goof that caused a plot hole, but my theory is Watsonian. Doyleist means from a meta perspective, Watsonian means an in-universe perspective. And last, there's a culture known as the Voshai off to the west. They suffered some kind of massive cataclysm, and I suspect the Warden went there on their quest for a cure. See my Beyond Theta's video for more information. Just wanted to mention that. And I think that's about it. I'm not going to try to recap all that, so let me know what you like here and what you're most excited to see, and if you have any of your own theories. So that's it for now, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to comment and like, and remember, Tala Nadas.